To Let's Talk Cabling, the award-winning podcast where knowledge is power and the low voltage industry connects. Hosted by Chuck Bowser, RCDD, we're here to empower installers, designers, and industry pros with the tips, stories, and best practices you need to stay ahead. From copper to fiber, standards to innovation, this is the show that keeps you plugged into success. So grab your tools, turn up the volume, and let's talk cabling. Let's talk cabling, your source for low voltage expertise and connection.
Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You know that can only mean one thing. Live after hours with Chuck Bowser, RCDD, Big C Technician, your favorite RCDD. You know I'm your favorite. Don't even try to pretend like I'm not. Okay? Your favorite RCDD. Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Always do the live after hours. Always answer questions on the spot. I got a bunch of questions in the queue. I had one just come in just a few minutes ago on the TikTok feed over there. But before we get started, let's start off with what are you drinking? It's after hours. So I am drinking a Zevia soda. Zevia soda. So tell me in the chat box, what are you drinking? If you know me, I'm addicted to those Zevia sodas. I love them. Love them. Sean's in the house. Howdy, Sean. Acronym challenge. Random and random as can be. Let's just pick one out of here. Oh, hold on. I got to put on my reading glasses so I can read these stupid things. I always forget that part. Yes. So let's do this one. Ooh, I haven't done this one in a while. ICT. ICT. What does that acronym mean? You know, our industry loves acronyms. Loves acronyms. Strawberry guava kombucha. Very cool. Very cool. I love kombuchas. So what does the acronym ICT mean? ICT. While you're writing typing that in, did you see last week's episode? I did a episode on a PoE extender, outdoor rated PoE extender from PoE Texas. It was really, really cool. Kalen's in the house. He says, "What's up? Infocom sent you a link." Yes, I saw that. When is it? I gotta go check that out. Armor Cat's drinking iced tea. Excellent information, communication, technologies. 10,000 points to Sean. Good job, my friend. Good job. Good job. So let's go ahead and get started with the show. Let's go to the questions. I want to answer this one first. One that came in from the TikTok feed while I was waiting. It's from Armor Cat, and he says, "How do you explain to the customer that an electrician is not the best choice for low voltage?" My answer is probably going to shock you. That's not always the case. There are some good electricians out there doing some good quality low voltage work. I will agree that there are some electricians out there doing some bad low voltage work. So my advice would be to explain to the customer that, when you want to have a root canal done, you don't go to a podiatrist. You go to the specialist, right? And that's how I would explain it to them. Say, look, electricians are good with high voltage, with stuff like that, but when it comes to the nuances of high performance data cabling, it's best left to those who have been trained and certified in that. So probably not the answer you were expecting there. So the next question comes from Twitter, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he says, "Chuck, we were thinking about integrating fiber optics in more of our projects. What are some of the main benefits of fiber over copper, and when should we consider making that switch?" Okay, so fiber is not always the answer. I've said that more than one occasion. It's not always the answer. Fiber does offer more bandwidth. More bandwidth. In fact, the single mode fiber has unlimited bandwidth. We don't know how much bandwidth that can handle. I feel like I answered this question last week. I don't know. And fiber is immune to EMI, electromagnetic interference. Copper-based cabling is susceptible to EMI and RFI. Fiber can go longer distances, right? And fiber is going to suit them best for future proofing. The problem you're going to run into with trying to do more fiber is it's going to cost more. And so now you got to talk to the customers and see if they're willing to pay that extra cost. You didn't mention, you just said more fiber in some of your projects. You didn't say if it meant more fiber for like the backbone or fiber to the desktop or a centralized fiber optic system. You didn't give me that kind of a detail, but in most scenarios, typically we're going to be running fiber for the backbones, for the data backbones, copper for the voice backbones, sometimes fiber for the voice backbones, and usually copper to the horizontal for the dropout on the floor. Very few people are doing fiber to the desktop because you have to buy a transceiver or you have to have a NIC card that's capable for fiber. Next question comes from LinkedIn. It says managing low voltage projects can be tough. From my experience, or from your experience, how does an effective project management make the difference in the outcome of these installations? Huge difference. Huge, huge, huge difference. Right? Number one, somebody who's well versed in project management is going to be really good at planning and scheduling. Planning and scheduling. You know, here's the thing though with projects. As soon as you plan it, that plan goes to you know what in a handbasket from the minute you start doing the work, because site conditions change. There's hiccups in the distribution system. You know, your main tech or project foreman can't get off another job site. But if you put a plan in place and maybe even alternate a backup plan, that's going to help it. And again, that goes with communicating with the customer. Let them know, hey, in fact, a good estimator, you should have that the project plan and schedule in the estimate. Right? And it doesn't take that long to create a simple, you know, Gantt chart that says, look, on days 1 to 5, we're pulling cable. On days, you know, 8 to 9, we're putting in the support system. Days 10 through 15, we're terminating the faceplates and we're terminating the building out the closet. If you set that expectation, now the customer knows, look, if we do something that changes this expectation, there's a potential change order there. Also, make sure that you optimize your resource allocation throughout that project. Think about, okay, are you going to need the fiber optic team? Because a lot of companies, they have people who just do copper and a few fiber specialists. What's their schedule like? When are they going to be able to come out to do the work? Will that impact the schedule? Will you be able to get the specialized tools, the lifts, and stuff like that? Make sure that you coordinate that and get that stuff all lined up before you do it. And you want to mitigate those risks because every project, you're basically hurting a bunch of cats. You're hurting a bunch of cats because even though you might have a plan, it's going to go crazy as soon as you start doing the work. And then probably the biggest thing is managing your quality. Managing your quality. As a good project manager, depending on the size of the project, and if you're dedicated to that project or not, right? You should be doing QA inspections on your project. Now, if it's one of those projects where you are where you're doing work, where you're project manager, you're doing many projects, and you only get to a job site once a month or once a week, I mean, because you're going to other jobs. Every time you go there, do a QA inspection. If you're a dedicated project manager, I would do probably 2 QAs a week, 10% of the work. So if they did 100 jacks, I would look at 10 of them. If they pulled, you know, 65 drops, I would look at 7 drops, 8 drops, make sure they were run right. If I find any deficiencies, then I would look at an additional 10. Ed, the old tech guy's in the house. Ed, how you doing, my friend? If you're not subscribing to Ed, the old tech guy, you need to go check out his channel. He's got a great channel. Jason's in the house. Says, good afternoon. I finally made it. RCDD here. Fellow RCDD. Yes. Thank you, fellow RCDD. Glad to have you in the room. Next question came from Facebook. It says, Chuck, when I'm putting together estimates for low voltage projects, what are some of the key factors I should always consider to avoid surprises? Number one, try to get as much information up front as you can before you start doing the estimate. I always used to tell customers, look, the more information you give me now, the cheaper I can make your price in the long run. You got to make sure that the more information I have, the more accurate my bid's going to be. The less chance you're going to have of change orders. Of all the projects I've done in my career, I've only maybe had a half a dozen or so actually go exactly the way planned, both scheduling and materials. And it just happens that way, right? Somebody wants to know, do you price per drop? Okay, so are you talking about giving the customer a price per drop, or are you doing a price per drop analysis on your estimate to make sure you're within your because if you estimate enough projects, you know how much it costs to install a drop and what your market will bear for your stuff. So there's always a good thing. Now, if you're asking me if a customer wants me to price per drop, I would give them a base price. Here's the price to do the job, and here's a price per drop to add or delete. Because here's the thing, there's always startup costs and close down costs, and you got to spread that across the drops. If you only have two drops, that startup cost and the teardown cost is a lot more. It's going to make the price per drop go up. If you have more drops, that price will go down because you're spreading across more drops, right? So make sure that you understand that. So I always didn't like the price per drop, but I would put it in there as an add-on for the base work. And I say, look, the price per drop is based on, and we're doing a minimum of X amount of drops. And then from there up, it'll be a price per drop change. I never price the entire job as a price per drop. So getting back to the estimating question, avoiding surprises, make sure that you have accurate calculation for your material and your labor cost. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. Some people use spreadsheets. Some people use estimating software. Some people still use pen and paper, believe it or not. And I get it. But especially if you're using spreadsheets, which is probably the most common, make sure none of the formulas got messed up. Make sure that it's still being used correctly. Make sure you have everybody the correct labor rate in for that fact, right? So that all kind of stuff will come into play. Also, make sure that you assess the complexity of the project, right? And what are the site-specific conditions? Are you going in to do work in an existing office space? Well, it's going to take a little bit longer because you got to work over top of people. If you're working at a new construction site and they don't have the freight elevators in yet, you might have to add some time to that because you have to haul the material up to the 17th floor or the 7th floor. That all takes time. That all adds to the project. Is it just one job with 25 cables, or is there 25 cables plus a fiber backbone plus a trunk and branch cable TV type system, or HDMI over twisted pair? That all adds to the complexity, right? Right. That you gotta watch out for that. And you also need to make sure, a lot of people miss this one. Use your historical data. You've done projects in the past. Make sure that okay, on average, if we have a cable that's 150 feet long, we know that it's going to take us X amount of time to pull it, terminate, and test it in these conditions. And always keep a running log of what that is. So that way you can put in the right labor factors. Ed, the old tech guy asks, how do you compete with underbidders? I've lost customers to some guys that do terrible work. That is a great question, Ed, the old tech guy. So my advice there is maybe not, just provide your price. And when they select the wrong person and they want you to come back to fix that other person's work, you just let them know your price is going to be X amount more. I've always bid against competitors, but I've always bid against other competitors who were the same size companies. I never, because we were always doing larger projects. So I never had a mom and pop come out and price against us. And every once in a blue moon, you will find somebody misses something in a bid, and that should tell the customer that's not going to be a good quality bid. In fact, a lot of estimates, what they'll do is if they do a bid meeting and they have 5 contractors that are giving them price, 10 contractors that are giving them price, a lot of times they will throw out the highest price, throw out the lowest price, because they figured the highest price, they over-engineered the lowest price, they missed something. And you'll find the other prices are usually within a couple percentage points of each other, usually no more than 10%. And that's where the project really lies. So if their other customers, the other competitors' pricing is cheaper because they're poor quality, don't fall into the trap of talking bad about that other contractor, because that's just going to make you look like sour grapes to the customer. The customer doesn't know that you got quality workers and workmanship and a great track history. They just know that 2 companies are pricing a bid and one's cheaper than the other. So always veer away from veer away from talking bad about other contractors. Just to let the customer know, look, you'll be there if anything goes wrong. Armor Cat wants to know in TikTok, do you charge for estimates? 99% of the time, no, I don't. There are some people who do charge for estimates. Kind of depends on the estimate. We did a design build one time for a very large government entity, and we did charge it for that estimate because it literally took a team of estimators. When I say team, 5 estimators, a month and a half to do the bid because it was multiple buildings, multiple different types of lands, copper, fiber, all kinds of stuff, and that kind of stuff we did charge for it. But most of the time, don't. But there are contractors out there who will charge for the estimates, and then what they'll do is they'll give you that they'll deduct that off of the estimate when they do that when you give them the work. So there you go. Pre-bid RFIs, Sean says, and it's usually linear feet in our bids and equipment. Excel Magic with Copilot AI to review as build formulas. I'm going to have to talk to you more about that, Sean. I'm interested in hearing about that because when I used to do estimates in spreadsheets, we didn't have AI. We didn't have AI to double check everything. So there you go. This question comes from Instagram. It says, Chuck, I'm starting out in the ICT field and I'm eager to advance my career. What advice would you give me to someone trying to make it in this industry? Okay, number one, be a continuous learner. Always learn. There's lots of free resources out there. Cable Installation and Maintenance Magazine is one of them. Subscribe to it, read it, watch their webcasts, go to the manufacturer's trainings. FOA has free fiber training. There's some good fiber videos on YouTube. Then try to get as much hands-on as possible. Because we as technicians, we're great at putting our hands on stuff and learning stuff. We are tactile learners. So always try to balance it. And I always used to say the perfect mix is 60% hands-on, 40% theory. Because if you do anything other than that, you lose the students, right? Daryl, the RCDD is in the house. And then also make sure you network with other industry professionals and just ask them. Say, if you know somebody who's got an RCDD, ask them, what was that experience like? What did they do? How did it qualify for it? See if it's something you want to do. And even if not the RCDD, it might be the Big C Tech, or it might be the installer copper, installer fiber. If you know somebody's got that, talk to them. If you don't know somebody who has that, get on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, yes, it's a great resource for that kind of stuff. Do a search for someone in your area. It'll list you some people, send them friend requests, say, look, hey, I'd like to talk to you about your certification. How did you get it? What was the process you get? Was it hard? Was it easy? What road did you take? Just don't be afraid to talk to people and stay updated on emerging trends and technological advancements. Like I did that show on Monday about the outside plant PoE extender. That's a relatively new product that PoE Texas just came out with. So I had them on the show. We talked about it because you never know. You may not use that OSP PoE extender for a year and a half, but at least you've read it, heard about it. So that way, when a customer does ask you, now you've got that going around in the back of your head. Kaylin says, off the church, talk to you about Infocom later. Okay, Kaylin, talk to you then, man. This one comes from Twitter. It says, I've had some challenges with leadership at my current job. Raise your hand if you're one of those who has had a problem with your leadership, right? And it's affecting my team. What strategies would you suggest for dealing with poor company leadership in our field? Okay, this is a tough one. Because I've worked for good leaders, I've worked for average leaders, I've worked for some poor leaders, right? I need to see if that PoE extender is TAA compliant. That's a great question, Daryl. I'll have to ask him that. And just look up. It's the outside plant PoE extender made by PoE of Texas. So here's my thing. Start documenting the issues you have. And you're not documenting the issues to build a case. You're just documenting the issues so when you sit down and you communicate through proper channels, the issues that you have, your points don't get lost. Okay, document. Go to your boss, say, hey, look, here's some reservations, there's some issues I have. Okay, and go in there with an open attitude to listen to their input. Because you might go in and say, look, hey, we're doing this wrong, we're doing that wrong, but they may be doing it that way because they might have a contract with a customer that says they have to do it that way. Or it might be just one of those scenarios where they just didn't think it through. And because you're the boots on the ground and you're seeing it firsthand, you might have a clear thing on that. But make sure that you open mind when you sit down and have that conversation. And then also try to seek constructive feedback from, you should have a mentor. You should have a mentor. I'm sorry, you should just have one, period. Bixie has a mentoring program. Get on LinkedIn, you can find a mentoring program, and they can help you with that as well too. Next question comes from LinkedIn. Looking ahead, what emerging trends should the ICT industry and professionals keep an eye on to stay ahead of the curve? Okay, well, AI. I know a lot of people says, well, Chuck, we pull cable. AI is not going to pull cable. But you know what? AI will help project managers. AI will help estimators. So it will do that. So stay current with that. Know how to use it. Don't be behind the ball when everybody else is using it to help them with their bids and stuff, and you're just now trying to learn that system. AI, big, big, huge thing. Also, smart building technologies. That's another big one coming down. Well, it's here. It's been around. In fact, we started talking about smart building technologies on that last episode with POE Texas. A lot of people think about POE for cameras and Wi-Fi, but he started talking about window tint and shades and stuff like that. And that's another potential avenue that you can go through to make more money as a technician, more money as a company. Also, make sure you stay current with the current standards. They're always changing them, and make sure that you always upskill. Okay, always upskill. Next question came from Instagram. And this one must have been a relatively new person. He says, "What is a structured cable? What is structured cabling, and why is it important compared to just running random cables?" Well, that's such a great question. Such a great question. So somebody said, Sean says, multiple mentors. Absolutely. I had two mentors last year. I had a mentor older than me and a mentor younger than me, and one was male and one was female. So that way I got a good view of people who have more experience than me, less experience than me, male versus female. So great. You can have more than one mentor. Absolutely. So structured cable system. A structured cabling system is a complete configuration of cabling and hardware that's designed to provide a comprehensive information transport system that's intended to serve a wide range of uses. Lots of words, but it's everything from the patch cord or equipment cord that plugs into the telephone or the computer, to the connector on that faceplate, to the horizontal cable that goes back to the patch panel, or the 110 block or the BIX blocks or whatever type of termination hardware you have, back to the fiber optic cable or the copper backbone cable going down to the data center, going to the demarcation point. Okay, when it's structured and it's done correctly, that's going to make moves, adds, changes go so much smoother. It's going to guarantee you performance. That cable is going to be able to do that 10 gig network over that Cat 6A cable, that 40 gig network over that Cat 8 cable. It's going to for that full maximum length of 295 feet, and it's also going to make it easier to do smooth moves, adds, and changes, because that way everybody's doing it the same way within your company. If you get sent out to a project you're not familiar with, it's less time to get familiar with that particular project because it was all done per the standards instead of being done, everybody's doing it differently. So that's why we have those two wiring schemes, T568A, T568B. It doesn't matter which one you choose. They both perform equally well. Just you stick with A or stick with B, whichever one. And B seems to be the most commonly chosen one in the United States. And if everybody does the same wiring scheme, then you don't have to, when you get on the job site, you don't have to go pull a jack off the wall to see how they terminated it, right? Because they always terminate it either A or B. That's the advantage of a structured cable system. It's going to guarantee that performance. It's going to make moves, that changes a lot easier for you. It's going to guarantee that everything is going to be reliable. And it also is going to make sure that the cable plant's going to be easier to manage. Because there's nothing more horrible than going out to a job site that you don't know anything about, and then next thing you know, you find out that nothing's labeled, and now you got to start toning a bunch of stuff. That's just horrific way of trying to do stuff. So Jason wants to know, hey Chuck, I would like to know your process on winning new work. I find it difficult in cold calling people. It's easier to be introduced by colleagues. Absolutely, it is. So there's a couple different thoughts here. Now the beautiful thing is, now in my positions that I've been an installer, I've been a technician, I've been a project foreman, project manager, and estimator, but I've never been in sales. But when I was a project manager for a short period of time, we had some sales type of functions with us, and we had to cold call, just like you said, and it's hard. Cold calling is hard. And, there's an old adage, you got to call 100 people just to get through to talk to 10 of them. And of those 10 people, you might get to sit in front of 3 of them. And of those 3 people, you might actually get the opportunity to bid one project. That's a lot of effort. A lot of effort. So there's a lot of different things you can look at. There are some construction bid books out there that you can look at. I will forewarn you, those construction bid books, everybody and their brother is bidding those things. Everybody and their brother is bidding those things. So it's going to be low margins, very low, very high chance if you miss something, it's going to go horribly wrong for you. Okay. Just the best way is word of mouth. Word of mouth. So I'm assuming that you have won some work already. Go to those people and say, hey, in your circle of people you talk to, who do you know that I might be able to talk to that might be interested in having some cabling done? Because like you said, word of mouth is the best way to get work because it's going to be less competitive. As an estimator, I love projects when I was only bidding against 1 or 2 other companies because that's easy. I hated it when I was bidding against 15 other people, right? Right. Daryl, the RCD says, word of mouth and get involved in your community. Yes, absolutely. Get involved in your community. Go to the trade shows. Go to the events. Like Kaylin was just talking to me about Infocom on TikTok. Infocom in Orlando is coming up here real soon. Go to those things. And if you don't want to pay to go to the conference, a lot of times you can go to the exhibit halls for free. And so go to the exhibit halls because everybody's got on a badge and kind of like the one back there, right there. Everybody's got on a badge and it's got their name. Talk to them. Don't be afraid to talk to them and say, hey, look, here's what I want to do a show on so you want to run your own business, your own cabling company. And I've got a couple of people who want to sign up and be on that show. Cable Guy's in the house. He might be one I might want to talk to, have him come on too. He says it's all word of mouth. TikTok, it's good to go further and have a good reputation and, of course, be honest. Yes, how you treat your customers, that will help your word of mouth. Absolutely. And the Cable Guy does. I think I remember right, Cable Guy. Let me know. I think you do more AV, more residential type of work, if I remember right. Let me know if I'm correct in making that assumption. But yeah, if you go to those kinds of events, there you go. He says, yeah, absolutely willing if I want to collaborate. Yes, I want to collaborate. You kidding me? I've been wanting to get you on the show for a while. So go to those events and talk to people. Just don't, when you see the badge, and you see don't go and introduce yourself. Say, I do blah, blah, blah. Read the room. Like, so if you see a guy who's wearing a Wire Monkey t-shirt, hey, what's that? What's Wire Monkey? What is that? If they got on Vans tennis shoes, they must be a skateboarder, have a kid who's a skateboarder. If they got a chain wallet, they must ride a motorcycle. Get them talking about something like that to break down the walls, just to get the communication going, and then slowly kind of migrate into, hey, what do you do for a living? Where do you work? And that kind of, I had a boss one time. He worked as sales lead for 10 years. 10 years. Yes. Now, when he got it, it was a huge bid. Now, don't get me wrong. It was a multi-year contract worth about $9 million a year. Daryl, the Cable Guy, Daryl, the RCD probably has done work with those people because he's a government guy, right? And so it was worth it in the long run. So that's always been one of the hard things to do is try to figure out where to get the work from. Starting out new, it's hard. It's kind of like starting out a podcast. I've been doing podcasts for 4 years now, 4.5 years, something like that, coming up on 5. The first year, I felt like I was just talking to the computer. I didn't have an audience, but I kept doing it. I kept being consistent. And like as the Cable Guy said, be honest, be straightforward. Don't be afraid to tell the customer no. Remember, it's not about sales. It's about building a relationship with a person or company, and find out how's it mutually beneficial for you two to strategically align. Because the minute it doesn't become beneficial to you or to the customer, that relationship's going to go south. I'm gonna put some more thought into that, Jason. Here, let me go ahead and take a snapshot of that picture. And what I'm going to do is I'm gonna do some research on that question. I'm gonna make a future episode out of it because that's gonna be a good resource for reference. All right, it's 6:30. Mama is cooking meatballs out there. I can smell them. I can absolutely smell them. So let's go ahead and shut down the show. And remember, until next time, knowledge is power.
Thanks for listening to Let's Talk Cabling, the award-winning podcast where knowledge is power and the low voltage industry connects. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your crew. Got questions or ideas for the show? Chuck wants to hear from you. Stay connected, stay informed, and always aim for excellence. Until next time, keep those cables clean, your standards high, and your future bright. Let's talk cabling, empowering the industry one connection at a time.